Welcome, 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 welcome. We are so pleased for you to join us here on this day two of our quantum conversation experience. Jean Eng is going to be leading us in an activation. And yesterday we talked about the sacred technology of the human body, the chakras, the DNA, the heart, the pineal gland, and how we can literally use this in meditation to bring up all the programming and the subconscious things so that we are free to navigate in love, so that we can live and express our love. And actually, when we do that, the expression can actually change the epigenetics. And we talked about that yesterday. So if you're new and you did not see day one, you can still enjoy that on the page that got you here. There's tabs that say day one and day two. So everyone, thank you so much for being here. Jean, welcome back. Hello.
Hi, Lauren. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here and to continue this discussion and also experience the energy of the Kundalini that's within us.
The Kundalini energy that's within us. We're really excited for that. I wanted to say we're going to catch up with you because you travel all around the world. You always have, nothing ever slowed you down. And so you have just finished the El Camino, the Camino, El Camino. What was that like? Let's catch up and get an update from you.
Yeah, for people who, maybe, being introduced that to the first time, some people may know it. It's been, very popular or popularized recently for spiritually, like Sonia Choquette wrote a book, The Intuitive Healer and Psychic Reader on, walking back home. And the Camino is an ancient, actually, pilgrimage to the Santiago, the Camino de Santiago is the kind of full name. And it goes along, there's actually two routes. One's in Portugal that ends in Santiago, another one goes through northern Spain. So we did about the last 100 miles. No, actually, the last, yeah, close to 100 miles of the Camino that goes into Santiago. And then actually behind me is if you go a little further, about 60 miles further, you reach the actual coast. And this is called Finisterre, and we're there today. And the Camino, which has a lot of a Christian base, actually has an ancient lineage of Celtic pilgrims. And that goes back to 10,000 or 20,000 years that walk the same path. So,
I always love this about sacred sites and monuments and places where humanity goes and gathers. And I've always thought, wow, if time stood still, if time stood still, how many hearts would you be in the room with? There's so many, and it's so ancient that it's just so cool. And I know of the El Camino from Shirley MacLaine,
mhm.
right? And so, wow, just and you've done this before, so wow. And I just want to say for those who want to join you on your treks, you do treks around the planet. You go to Kilimanjaro. I mean, all over. You go to Kailash. You're going to go to Tiger's Nest in 2027, 2028. That's pretty cool. So, good on you. Thank you for sharing your travels and joining us today live from El Camino, the end of El Camino. Cool. All right. So, before we get into today's transmission, let's check in on Kundalini. Now, Kundalini, there's people in our audience who say, wow, I've had a Kundalini awakening. And then others are like working with chakras. If we're not, I don't want to say delicate, but if we do things too quickly, you can blow your frequency, right? You can it can kind of get dangerous. Can you give us a definition or an understanding of Kundalini energy, and does it awaken naturally for us? And then certainly there's things that we can do to accelerate it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think more and more spiritual aspirants or practitioners are becoming quite aware of the Kundalini and the practices, particularly now in the West. There's been about a couple decades of practitioners, probably starting in the 60s, at least in the West or the United States, but of course across the world. But it's an ancient practice, even dating, like I mentioned, 10 to 20,000 years ago. But it's been definitely codified in the last 5,000 years up to the present. And there's a book actually, his name's Gopi Krishna. It was written in modern times. And the title of it is Kundalini, like I may be paraphrasing it, the evolutionary energy of man or humankind. So it definitely is an energy we all have. Whether we're consciously working with it or not is a question. And that spiritual yogic systems, have definitely geared into as a technology. But just as a quick definition, it's basically the energy at the base of the spine and the lower chakras. That would include the basic chakra, sacral chakra, navel chakra. And it's sort of this raw, subtle energy that we come into because we have a human body. We could talk about that later. So there are certain spiritual practices that are considered working with the Kundalini. And it have been one of the reasons we incarnated as a soul into the human body, because the Kundalini energy is not supposedly, at least within a lot of these traditions, available without a physical body. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to do spiritual practices as a spirit in between or in another dimension, because they may not, that those forms may not have Kundalini energy to work with. So that becomes, on a greater scale, one of the reasons we actually may be in human incarnation. We may or may not have remembered that consciously yet, or it's coming to people's mind now, or some people who are practitioners, maybe long term, in terms of years or even decades in this life, practitioners of Kundalini may have realized that this is one of their life purposes because it does accelerate the evolution of your consciousness. And we can kind of get into that details and as well as do the experience of the Kundalini transmission.
All right, it accelerates consciousness. All right, so activating Kundalini, that's very interesting. Here's a comment that came in. Kathy says, I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening before I knew anyone in these communities. It was scary at first. I experienced many spiritual gifts coming online. People thought I was having a psychotic break. Now, this is very interesting because one thing that I noticed, Jean, in my life, if someone is okay, not really aware of what could be happening, they could be diagnosed with bipolar, manic depression, right? They could be, or even being diagnosed as psychotic. So they're put on prescription drugs, right? And so what I noticed is that women around 40, isn't that interesting? Do you think that that age of 40, and then when people go through life, and we see in this community, there's younger ones coming along all the time, but that age of 40 is very interesting. Have you been able to identify what's going on there? Because it's like that could be this body naturally waking up to the Kundalini energy, giving us a little kickstart if we're not doing anything. Do you agree to that?
Yeah, definitely. You brought up a couple really important points to this discussion on Kundalini. So I'll kind of just highlight them as well as, start with Kathy's comment, which is you could even call it archetypal within the West, being awakened to the Kundalini actively. So what Kathy is referring to in terms of, these having this maybe diagnosis, even of psychosis, when in fact it's a spiritual awakening due to Kundalini, is what happened to many people in the West when spiritual Kundalini activating teachers, they came from all over the place, but a lot of them came from East Asia, like in the 60s, like I was mentioning, in the West and like in the United States, where I live, and other people might live, but all over the planet, particularly in the West where it wasn't publicly established. So they would activate the Kundalini and then they would leave because they were kind of maybe on a teaching tour. This very potent energy would come up, and if you explained it energetically, through the chakras, it would accelerate the awakening of the chakras, particularly in the head. And that leads to inner visions that hasn't been stabilized yet. And from a Western medical model, like talking to the Arcturians or talking to angels, that's not in the Western scientific paradigm, particularly, 20 years ago. So that would be, and if the person who's getting that awakening doesn't have a cultural background or a spiritual support community to let them know that this is part of the process, they're kind of on an island. So if they go to a medical practitioner who has a different framework, most likely they would be, diagnosed within that more psychiatric model. And it actually became in the DSM-4, which is the psychiatric um, sort of textbook on psychiatric disorders. It eventually became known as a spiritual awakening. So it didn't have that same heavy connotations of another type of diagnosis. But that took about a decade or two for the DSM-4 to recognize that it was actually a spiritual experience and process and not a psychotic experience. I'll just
Okay.
start with there. Yeah, pause there. I know you had another question within that, but I'll just pause there for now.
No, that's really good. I just, to me, I'm glad, I'm relieved that that has, maybe they're recognizing that, because this was about 15, 20 years ago, really, that these diagnoses of the people that I know came about. So it's good that it's, changing slightly. And so, all right, okay. Moving on, I wanted to share a comment from Yvonne. So, we have our light body, okay? And so Kundalini, I'm going to address Yvonne's question, but this is kind of related to the light body and the Kundalini. And Yvonne's question is 15 years ago and 6 years ago, so she's had a couple of instances. She says, it was in the middle of the night. I felt like being electrocuted. I stood up and it calmed. Wasn't sure if this was Kundalini or a walk-in. What do you
Mm.
have to say about that one? And for me, it kind of brings up, wow, electrocuted feeling. Could that be the light body? Or what is your sense in this from
Hmm.
your training? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it could be a number of things, and would be sort of the context, particularly in the next couple months after those experiences. So it definitely could be a Kundalini type of activation. And then what would be kind of the unfolding of that in the next couple months would be maybe heightened awareness, a type of acceleration of one's sensitivity to more subtle energies, maybe even more energy, physical energy to do things. That's a possible route that it was a Kundalini activation, those electrocution feelings. The other possibility that was mentioned, if it was a walk-in or some type of spiritual connection, is that there would be a more interaction with another consciousness or a download of another maybe conscious perception or level of consciousness. They kind of cross over, so there's a lot of kind of discernment or diagnosis that usually has to, come diagnosis in the best sense of the word, not really a medical diagnosis, but an evaluation of what it falls into, whether it's a Kundalini activation or sort of like the walk-in experience. So, what happened in the next couple months is usually, more helpful in telling whether that particular experience or those two experiences was a Kundalini activation.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Yvonne, if you want to give us any more information, we can talk about that as well and assist you with that. It's good for all of us to hear your story. It helps us realize what's happening within ourselves as well. Okay, Jean, in the work that you do with the Arcturian healing transmissions and transmissions from higher beings that you work with, we focus on the central column, the Sushumna, and it helps us build our attention. So and we talked about this, um, even touching the heart's one way to activate these centers. And so when you're working with the Sushumna, this column of light, we often go above that column to the soul star chakra, otherwise known as the Ra in Egypt. And that is where pure consciousness comes in on. Can you give us a recap of how we're literally drawing down cosmic energy and information into our system when we do this? Because that is really what you develop in your teachings and transmissions.
Yeah, so to have a little bit of what maybe we call the Kundalini map, and to answer your question very directly, people who've been working with Kundalini will probably have a similar or even the same map. But sometimes these are just helpful, sometimes a little cute labels I've created, maybe from other traditions. But I call it like the Kundalini Highway. So there's actually what you're mentioning, the Sushumna Nadi, the central channel. So people can think of it as like a pathway, an energetic tube that runs from your root chakra in front of your physical spine vertically, and then to the crown. And some traditions have it then like a candy cane come down to this chakra here, the Ajna chakra. But so that's within the body, you know and then that tube extends upwards, which you're mentioning, these transpersonal chakras that I use that term, but you can think of that tube of light continuing straight up infinitely, and then from your root chakra, which is at the perineum, it extends infinitely down to the earth. So when you're working with Kundalini, the map that you're usually talking about is the one that's the tube within your body. So I mentioned the Kundalini is this sort of very raw, powerful, subtle energy. It's not on the physical plane. It's very close to the physical plane. That's why it's kind of, you use the term raw. It would be down at the base of that tunnel, that tube. So that's where your root chakra is, sacral chakra, navel chakra. They all contribute to the Kundalini energy. And I will get back to the question that you asked, like why, particularly with women, but there's also, men are experiencing it. Like around 40, you may see this either spontaneous Kundalini activation, or like you said, kind of an opening of the senses that could go one way or the other, depending on the person's, maybe environment, whether it's diagnosed as a psychotic break or a huge spiritual awakening. It could be the experience. It's the same thing. It just depends on what's going on around the person and their own support system. So kind of back to this kind of storyline as a just overview. So in general practices, and including the Arcturian practices, other like celestial galactic practices, another modality kind of coming through, you are activating that energy from the lower chakras, and it basically is like jet fuel. These are just common ways of thinking about metaphoric ways that are going and moving upwards in that tube to touch all these different chakras. Like, it would go to the navel, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, the ajna, the forehead, finally the crown. And in a very traditional explanation of Kundalini, that very raw fuel, you can think of it as like jet fuel or, hydro fertilizer, is coming. Basically, it touches all those chakras, but particularly the crown. And it super activates the crown. And comes back to the evolution of consciousness. When the crown is super activated, you can access very subtle states of divine consciousness, like non-dual states, which are considered states of enlightenment. So it's almost like you can't get it to spin fast enough and develop fast enough unless you put the jet fuel in. These are very, gross metaphors. It's more subtle than that. So that's one of the purposes of activating this energy at the base of your spine, actively, and bringing it up, particularly to the crown, so that you can access very deep non-dual states of consciousness that are activated from the crown chakra.
And that word non-dual states of consciousness, it's oneness, it's unity. It's all there is. There's no separation. That's so beautiful. We want that for the whole world. And I know that's your mission, and that's the mission of light workers here. We heard from Yvonne that since her Kundalini awakening, she's dedicated her life to energy work and helping humanity at the highest level. So, what a beautiful thing for us to activate. And just to summarize, this happens whether we know it or not, and just to go with the flow. But what we're going to do now is a transmission with you. This will be about 30 minutes or so. And this will allow us to learn more about it, to feel these frequencies. You can share with us any premise if you'd like, and then we can go right into it, Jean. Thank you.
Yeah, let me continue a little bit with that discussion so that the transmission will make sense. And I'll talk also during the transmission as more like in the flow of explaining what happens. Uh, so, so there's a couple of things. Yes, unity consciousness. In people's study on their spiritual path, the metaphor I would use is like you could uh, see in a description of a steak on the steak that you eat on a menu, and you can actually taste the steak. So when you study non-dual teachings and you hear like, yes, we're the superconscious mind is unified with everyone else's superconscious mind. You learn different spiritual tenets about unity consciousness. It's a very important part of the spiritual path. That is like reading a menu that's describing your meal, your favorite meal. Until you actually sit down and taste it, you really haven't had the direct experience. And most people probably know what I'm describing, but it's important distinction to know on our spiritual study. So when you actually have a direct unity state of consciousness, that would be like tasting the meal or eating the meal. When you're studying principles about unity consciousness, or even someone teaching you what that state is like, you are getting the description on the menu. Now, some people, if a teacher or a facilitator or transmitter is in unity consciousness for a long time, they can have you spontaneously, by their speech or even just their presence, achieve the tasting of the dish, meaning you could spontaneously or through proximity, energetically, consciously, in fact, have a non-dual experience. So the reason why Kundalini is accelerative is it could take you, in fact, many lifetimes to taste that dish. You start out by learning about it, like reading the menu, but it could take you, without consciously working with the Kundalini, many lifetimes to actually finally get to taste the dish. Now, some people are tasting that spontaneously now, like what might have been shared in people's early experiences of Kundalini or even Kundalini experiences now. It usually means like in many lifetimes, they were somewhat activating it, working with it. And so now they're kind of bearing the fruit of that. And then the blessing of these technologies, it's like almost like having a cell phone versus not having a cell phone in terms of technology, is when you have the technologies, the reason they're so sacred is you can start to, actively, consciously taste the dish many times when you have a technique. That's a legitimate, authentic technique to activate the Kundalini, to experience the non-dual state more and more in a sustained fashion. That's kind of the goal after you've had a few non-dual experiences is that can you keep that experience long enough within like even daily living? So, okay, so that's going to all be part of this transmission. We're just going to start also, based on how much time we have, and I'll kind of go along and mention what's going on with the transmission, and you can use this as a practice. You can re-listen to this. In fact, it might even be meant more as a practice than a one-time activation, which will have a significant acceleration. But most spiritual practices take some effort of sort of repetition. So that will be embedded also in this, and I'll say more about it at the tail end of our meeting. Okay, so why don't we start?
And I just want to
Mhm.
interject quickly for those who are new to Jean Eng. This is an experience for you to tune in so deeply to yourself. For the most part, it's a silent transmission. And so maybe you want to share a little bit about that because when we're tuned into ourself with eyes closed, and we're doing this on video, but I hope nobody's looking at the video because we should be eyes closed looking within. We're going to just be aware of what we're feeling and sensing. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, probably in this particular transmission, I may talk a little more, but yes, predominantly it's silent. A lot of the transmissions are silent. The way you might want to think of it, a lot of people here, within their worldview, probably believe in spiritual beings, angels, Arcturians, galactic beings. So in the transmission, particularly we're asking for the Arcturians. I know we didn't get a lot of time to necessarily talk about that, but think of them as spiritual helpers or a type of cosmic angel. Now, not on the physical, but on the subtle world. What's happening in the transmission is they're going to be like a mechanic, and you're the car, your Kundalini map. And they're going to be tinkering in a very professional way with your chakras in the subtle world, if you allow them to accelerate the activation of your Kundalini in a safe manner. So they're going to kind of be, this is metaphoric as well as somewhat literal. They're going to kind of be working your chakras, your energy system, your Kundalini energy, your crown chakra. It's almost like, the F1 racers. They have like a huge mechanic team, and they're all like, drilling in the tires in 3 seconds. And that you have a professional Arcturian Kundalini F1 team that's going to work on you metaphorically or literally to accelerate your Kundalini development.
Cosmic pit stop. Zin,
That's
zin. Okay. I love it. All right, everyone, then enjoy this. Thank you, Jean.
and don't ask me where that metaphor came from, but okay. So yes, you can just relax. Some of it will be silent, but while that's happening, we've kind of asked or opened the vortex of energy to allow, it could be your guides. If you don't really know or resonate with the Arcturians, it could just be your spiritual guides and helpers. They'll be there too. There is the Arcturian availability, and while it's already happening, it's already been happening actually since the start of our discussion, but now it's kind of more time we can tune in actively. So the intention for this transmission, it's already been starting, is that we're opening to the acceleration of our Kundalini to develop our subtle bodies and consciousness in service to the planet, in service to others, other beings in all dimensions. So just give a moment. You can add your own specific intention. You may even have a healing intention that you'd like the energy to work on, but anything along the lines of the Kundalini activation may also align very well with this transmission. In this first part of the transmission, we're actually not going to tune into the lower part of the tube where the Kundalini is. We're actually going to what Lauren mentioned, tune in above our head. And we're asking for, you might call it God, source, love, the quantum field, that higher intelligence, that energy to come from above. Also, our higher soul is above. And that energy is going to come down from above into the Kundalini channel or tube. So we'll just spend a couple minutes here anchoring the divine energy from above our head. You don't have to necessarily actively do anything, but if you wanted to put your awareness above the head, that will help facilitate our Arcturian F1 team. You may feel a tingling sensation, even a fiery sensation. You may even see a kind of a divine fire from above. If you are coming from the Catholic faith or Christian faith, actually, and they talk about the Holy Spirit as descending flame, esoterically, this is exactly the energy we're working with. In that tradition, or if you follow that tradition, this would be the descent of the Holy Spirit as a type of divine fire. Now I'll guide the energy in terms of what it's actually doing. So you can think of it as coming into your crown, moving down to the center of your head. Basically, it's going to come down through the Kundalini channel, or it's going to come down to your throat center, down to your heart, energy is continuing down to your solar plexus, down to your navel, to the level of your sex or sacral chakra. Now it's down at the bottom of the Kundalini channel at your root chakra. This is at the perineum. And now we're just going to lightly keep our awareness at the base of this Kundalini channel at the perineum. The Arcturians or your guides, the divine, that is actually that divine energy from above, from your higher soul. It's now going to gently and safely activate your Kundalini energy. It has its own intelligence, so you don't have to worry about any problems. You have the highest intelligence activating your Kundalini. It's going to do it regardless if you keep your awareness there, but to help our F1 team, you can just lightly keep your awareness there. We'll give it a couple minutes to let this activation deepen. But while we're doing that, I'll just share, many of us know the idea or fairy tale of Prince Charming coming to kiss Sleeping Beauty. So the deeper esoteric meaning of that Western fairy tale, a lot of esoteric teachings are in fairy tales or legends, is exactly what we just did. The divine energy is like metaphorically, the Prince Charming energy, and it's coming to kiss Sleeping Beauty. So that would be your sleeping Kundalini, meaning unless you consciously have awakened the Kundalini, it just naturally over time, could be decades, years, lifetimes, it will awaken. But for the most part, unless it's actively awoken in a particular lifetime, it's sleeping or inactive. So that would be Sleeping Beauty. Now you're going to see later in the transmission, the story continues. If people remember, there's seven dwarves. Now the seven dwarves are actually your activated seven chakras. And so that's actually where we're going to move towards. But I just want to share that embedded esoteric teaching within a very well-known Western fairy tale. We have had another 30 seconds or so to allow the divine energy. Again, that was Prince Charming in the fairy tale. Come down, activate our Kundalini energy. And now we're going to ascend. So this is an alchemical mix. So the divine energy from above has come down to activate our Kundalini energy from below. And a portion of that, you don't have to consciously decide how much, is now going to ascend and activate each of the seven chakras. We'll probably touch into more chakras than that, but in general, if you have a seven chakra model, it's going to activate each of the chakras. And in our storyline, the fairy tale, those are actually the seven dwarves. So they start out as dwarves, but they'll be activated into much even more dynamic chakras. The first chakra is actually the root chakra. It's actually being activated. Now bring your awareness to the level inside the central channel or tube, to the level of your pubic bone. So that would be considered the sacral or sex chakra. We just hold it there for a few seconds, 30 seconds. If you do this on your own, or maybe you've already learned something like this, and you're not following the recording, you can always spend as long as you like, as long as there's still activity. Sorry about that. At each of the chakras. This is where the activation is occurring, the awakening, the acceleration of your chakral development. Continuing to bring your awareness and this alchemical energy, the activated Kundalini, now up to the level of your navel. You may feel a warmth, a heat, even a type of blissful experience. That's all good. That's all in the direction of the proper activation. So you shouldn't suppress that. You should actually bask or enjoy in that while still staying mindful or focused on the practice. So you don't want to become super blissed out that you lose the thread of the practice. Now, the consciousness, our consciousness, the energy, is at the level of the solar plexus. That's in between your rib cage. Again, inside the central tube or channel. Again, you may feel heat, tingling. You also might not feel anything. That's fine. You just put your awareness there. The divine energies will work on their own. We can trust that. Again, it's completely safe because of the direction in which we started. We brought in the divine intelligence. So it even is more aware than our conscious mind in terms of how much to activate. They call that top-down Kundalini activation. So the activation came from above. Now, continuing with the upward movement, you're now at the level of your heart. So here, the Kundalini energies are super activating your heart chakra. Maybe you feel the spin of the chakra. So this is another reason to do, to motivate us to do this practice and to learn as much as we can about this system, regardless of which lineage you learn. We want to develop a deeper sense of compassion. And again, we could do it intellectually. It's like reading the menu, but we would need to also develop experientially, and that's actually developing the chakra. That's what we're doing right now. You may even feel a spinning of your body. Try to keep your body still, even though some people might feel energy strong enough to move your body, like in a rotation or back and forth. Just try to stay still and energetically move. Now the Kundalini activated energy is moving up to your throat center. It's highly activating your throat chakra, spinning faster, expanding. Just rest there, and I'll kind of say a couple words about activated throat chakras. So now what you say tends to manifest faster when your throat chakra is activated or more well developed. Also, what you say is more penetrating. And so that can go in two directions. If you say healing phrases or words to someone, it will heal them faster. But if out of emotion or anger you say something to someone, it will also penetrate them deeper. So there's more responsibility when your chakras are activated. It's like wielding a more powerful system. So with that wielding comes more responsibility, as we can see with our speech. So even small comments about ourselves, sometimes we put ourselves down, like as a demurring type of activity. You want to watch that and not say those things anymore because they'll tend to activate or manifest. We're coming into the truth of we are the Word, or the Word was God. We have that divine capacity of creation through speech. Now we're bringing the activated Kundalini energies up to the center of the head. This is about the level of the chakra that's called the ajna, the one in between your eyebrows, but we're in the center part of the channel, so that would be in the center of your head. We talked earlier about the pineal in meeting one, if you wanted to review that. But we're now super activating the pineal with this jet fuel. Again, if you feel like moving physically, try to just stay still. That will dissipate the energy. You could move a lot energetically, just keep your body still. You may even enhance the feeling of the rotation or activation By keeping your body still, your energy body will move. That's why when your Kundalini is activated, you can see into the inner world. Basically, your clairvoyance is increasing. This is exactly where it's happening, is when the Kundalini hits the center of your head, the pineal. But now it's under control. And that's why you'd want to do this practice if you really feel drawn on a daily or even regular basis. It's a bit like lifting weights, but your clairvoyance will get increasingly better and better each time you touch into this pineal with the activated jet fuel. Okay, we're going to continue upwards. We're now touching into the crown chakra. This is sort of the jewel in the lotus, sometimes called the pinnacle aspect of Kundalini practice, is to develop and activate the crown chakra. The metaphor of Kundalini as super fertilizer, like super true grow fertilizer, is very apt in terms of your chakras like a flower, and you're watering it with really this essential food. You may feel a tingling at the top of your head, which is the activated crown chakra. And maybe you've seen in pictures or tankas, posters of divine beings of the crown chakra, you see like a flame emanating above their head from the crown. So think of the crown chakra as having two sets of petals, a set of outer petals, like flower petals, and a set of inner petals. Sometimes they call it 12 inner petals that resonate with the 12 petals of your heart, which was activated earlier. Now, when the chakra of the crown starts to spin very fast, those petals, they start to point upwards. And from a clairvoyant point of view, it looks like a flame. That's what we're creating here. You might even see a flame in the middle of your crown chakra. Or you could even imagine that kind of to preempt that movement. That's completely fine. Both either to see it or to imagine it. Now, in a more, you could say, advanced form, or maybe it's not the traditional form, unless maybe you learned it directly from a physical teacher, or maybe you received it in a download. We're going to move this Kundalini energy to the chakras that are actually existing above your body, above your head. So, kind of imagining the tube continues to extend upwards beyond your crown chakra. You want to move about 6 to 12 inches or 15 to 30 centimeters above your head. And I continue with that Christian esoteric teaching, the flame above the apostle's head. I call that the Holy Spirit. That's actually also your activated first transpersonal chakra. That's what we're doing now directly. We're tasting the dish directly. So you can study it through metaphor. I could have explained that to you, but now you're actually experiencing it directly right now as you keep your awareness about 1 foot above your head with the activated Kundalini force. But what does that actually mean? It means you are accessing your highest wisdom, which is what the Holy Spirit represents in those inner traditions, inner Christian traditions. You could call it a super intelligence, maybe even use the label super consciousness. Just tune into how this activation or tingling differs maybe from the other chakras and even the crown chakra might have a different taste or feeling. And that discernment is very good to start to catalog. So first we start out by just saying it all feels like tingling. But if you slow down, there's a little bit of a nuance between each of the chakras activating. And that's quite an advanced clairvoyant perception. So the more you do this, the more your clairvoyance will increase just by even knowing the different tingling feelings at each chakra. It's almost like playing a different note on a flute. So our subtle body awareness is becoming sharper, more refined each time we taste the dish directly. Now you may perceive actually or feel like there's a being above your head, maybe even a little bit higher than this first transpersonal chakra. Regardless of what you call that being, maybe you already know who that being is. Usually in a lot of traditions, that's considered our holy guardian angel. If you've heard that term, it's a very well-known term. It's usually the spiritual being that is most closely guiding us. You could think of it as a being, an intelligence, an angel, could be an ancestor, could be an Arcturian, could be a cosmic being. But your perception of that intelligence will become much more aware because everything is heightened with the Kundalini energy. It's like at first, you just had a small lamp on. Now you're turning on all the lights so you can kind of see who's in the room, is the metaphor. Just try to very gently, not in a very aggressive or kind of active way, just tune into that other presence above your head. You probably feel very familiar, warm, kind of like your best friend, all rolled into one. We can continue, you can always spend longer at each station, but the ending of a Kundalini activation practice is as important as the entire practice. So you want to make sure you come back into your body. This is what we talked about before, the ungrounded feeling, perhaps the spaciness, maybe the inability to, be in the world. This last 2 minutes is going to make sure that you can bring everything back, be super effective in the world, super heightened. Maybe it's like superwoman, superman, but in the most grounded sense. So what you want to do is gently come back into your head, touch into the center of your head. There's three very important places you want to touch into. First one is the center of your head. And you also want to go in this order. You want to come down and touch into your heart. So center of the head for thinking, center of the heart for feeling, compassion. And finally, to make this fully grounded, you're going to move to 4 finger widths or 3 finger widths below your navel. It's not exactly your sacral chakra. It's not your navel chakra. Sort of a combination. They call it your lower dantian or hara. That may be a familiar term. You want to get the sense that all the energy is now being anchored in that lower dantian belly region, and spend up to 30 seconds to a minute just to make sure that that's where your energy is being stored from this practice. We'll just give it a few moments there. You can even say the energy is now being stored in my lower dantian or belly region. And to end the practice, since we were assisted by our F1 divine team, I just want to say thanks, maybe give them a raise. So we thank the God, divine source, love, the quantum field, whichever word resonates best for the divine for you, to our spiritual guides and teachers. And now, if you named specific beings who are helping you, we did call upon the Arcturians. They usually don't even really need a thanks. That's at least what they told me. But we thank the Arcturians, galactic beings. We thank the angels, the Kundalini masters. Maybe we knew or even didn't know that were there. We thank our holy guardian angel who we established a deeper, direct connection with. We thank our higher soul. Thank you for the great joy and the blessings. We do this to assist all beings to achieve this state with thanks and full faith. When you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes and snap your fingers.
Wow, thank you, thank you, thank you. That was wonderful, and I hope everyone felt that. That is so cool. All right. When you said to stop moving the body, then I really felt the energy there. That was really cool. That's our energy. That's divine energy. That's full of information. That's an awakening. Another thing that I found really interesting was the level of heat, and it was different in each chakra. It was when we started and we brought that light down, and then we held it in the root chakra. I felt no, first it was the divine fire above the head. When we started there, it was like I was almost moved to tears. It would be interesting to see how everyone is greeted by this energy, because when we are moved to tears, that's something right there. That is an activation right there, and our senses are feeling it. So there's beautiful messages coming in. You had to stop the spinning. Someone had to stop the spinning. Wow. I felt that energy. It was really cool. Um, when we were holding, then we held down at the root chakra before we even went back up. And I felt the energy like in my throat, in different parts of my body. That was very interesting. So that was just something that we can do every day, and imagine what we're going to do every day. And the power of our words, that really landed for me big time. All right. If anyone would like to share what they experienced, you can raise your hand. You can share in the comments. If you have to leave, that's wonderful. Thank you. There's a recording for this. Immediately after today's show, it's going to be on the page that got you here. So you can do this again. Wow, Jean, I want the whole world. Now it's very cool. Raima says, I felt cool relief. It's just very interesting, all the frequencies. All right. What would you say to continuing this and developing this every day?
Yeah, the portion that we did, people can do this every day safely. That's for people who, there were some comments. People who have heard the term Kundalini or explored it. Sometimes it has that negative light, because a lot of even that book by Gopi Krishna, a lot of it's the problems he had with the awakened Kundalini. But I wanted to explain why this is very safe. And it's embedded in the meditation. But just to double click on that, when you activate the Kundalini from above and you're asking for the divine intelligence, so that is exactly what I mean, I use a term. It has an intelligence. So it's not gonna super activate the Kundalini to a point where you can't handle it. So it knows you. It's actually your higher soul's energy too, intelligence. And that's why it's sort of like very like dose dependent. It's going to activate exactly how much you need for that day. Then you bring it up. There's a purification aspect that I didn't talk about as it's doing that. So that will purify your channels both down and up as it's happening. That's also what leads to some of the problems that people experience with Kundalini is it's like fertilizer. So it activates so-called the weeds and the flowers. So if there's things in your chakras is, that are patterns that, that are let's say bad habits, it would activate that if you just went from down below and sent it upwards without the intelligence and without the purification. So it's all embedded in the practice. So yeah, like if it's new to you, maybe 3 times a week. So you do it, give yourself a day or two to integrate, also to really feel what it's doing to your system, and then you do another practice. It's like you hit it with the blowtorch again. But if you've done Kundalini before or you've done a lot of spiritual practice with that kind of energy, you could literally do it every day and maybe take one day off. That would be a very like motivated, activated person. It's definitely possible as the far end of the activation, and people will know where they kind of fall. Don't try to be something you're not. So if you feel like actually two is enough for me, then that's exactly what you should do.
Well, thank you for that. Absolutely wonderful. We have comments coming in on our Zoom channel and over on our YouTube channel as well. We've got people watching from the YouTube. Share with us on the YouTube what you experienced as well. We want to know from you. So thank you. I know people will continue this. This is us. This is our energy. This is our connection. Wow, we felt that connection. We see, um, yeah, wow. Helen says I could also hear different sounds in my left ear. Again, I just feeling the energy when you were talking about the clairvoyantness and opening that up when we were in the pineal gland. It's just so fascinating that this is the importance of this work. So thank you, Jean, for sharing this with everyone. And everyone, this is like the most important things that we can be doing for ourselves at this time on the planet to build these subtle bodies, to develop these chakras with divine intelligence that's within us already. It's our way of moving forward on the planet. Finding peace on the planet is first finding peace within ourselves. So that is that purification a little bit as well. That the negative, I'm kind of just sensing the negative energies, like before this call, before this activation, how are we thinking? And now after this activation, how are we feeling? It's like night and day. And that's what makes this so important. So thank you again. And I just want to give you a moment to reflect on all of that.
Yeah, I wanted to double click on what you just mentioned, and I missed the name, but the person also was feeling the sounds that because I was trying to speak what I was sensing going on, and there was a layer of clairvoyant activation in this that I think as people practice, maybe because of the level of the group here, you try not to overload someone with too many things, but it seemed like that was what the energy was, like people could handle that, or that was it, what the energy was bringing. So just to say, like if you practice this at that speed, you could go slower if you go too fast, you could also go faster, but you miss out a little bit maybe on the development of the clairvoyance. So if you really feel into each of those, like you might start hearing a sound, or you feel the difference between the vibration. And that's a very high, I said it in the transmission because it just came to me. That's a very high level of clairvoyant training, is to keep getting more and more refined. You know, what's the difference between the activation, the vibration here and the vibration here, like the vibration, the ajna, and then just like 2 inches up. It's a completely different note if you were playing it on a flute. But a lot of people would just say, oh, it just feels like a vibration, like in the beginning, which is great. At least you felt something. But there's actually a completely different frequency at these 2 points. When you can start to taste the difference, then that's a really refined step. So it's all there in the practice as you're doing it. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you again. So amazing. I hope many people tasted the the steak today, tasted that. That is, to me, that's what truth is, our experience of something like this. And so, good work, everyone. Beautiful comments coming in. This was such a gift, and this replay will be here for everyone. And you may take this on your own as well and use this in your own life without the guidance of the meditation. Of course, that recording is here for you, but this is something that we can learn to do. And I just want to circle back to what you said is linger in the each chakra, linger there. Don't be so fast, but just linger in there, because that's where a lot of the magic and the sensations and the awareness will happen as our chakras literally are developing. So that's really cool. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you everyone for being here. So that is our activation for today. And I know you're all lit up with it. So one of the things that we do with Jean Eng every month here at New Earth One Network is transmissions. Jean comes for 3 days and does a series of 3 transmissions, all 3 days in a row. It's such a magical episode. The energy is very palpable. The community is very palpable. And over the last, wow, I think it's been 11 years now, Jean, 11 years. We have created this library that is quite expansive. And so there's a special offer. I'm going to post the link here in the chat. It's really a beautiful way to get your feet wet with these teachings and to begin with them in your life. So there's two package offerings that we have. The one is the Super Quantum Healing Package. That's Jean's super package. It's got like 25 different courses in there, including Mount Shasta work that you do with extraterrestrials and spoon bending techniques, really quantum. That's why it's the Super Quantum Healing Package. But it actually has 24 of our transmissions from the first several years where we began, and that's pretty cool. And then there's a second package, the New Earth transmissions, which is an additional number of programs that are just the continuation of these teachings. So those are available for everyone. Please check them out. I'm going to post the link. And when you see that page, you can click into the item and learn more about it just from more than what you see on that page itself. So click in and see everything that comes with those teachings and join us when you see Jean's next transmissions on New Earth One Network. It's really a beautiful time. It's a beautiful community, and it's all there for you. And we invite you to join us. One of the things I love about this is that there's no hierarchy, there's no prerequisite. So you could literally go in any order that you like, even within each series. You could start with part 3 instead of part 1. That's just really cool because it's all standalone, because the frequency is different in every session. So this will amplify your awareness of the energies, and it will help you develop the subtle bodies. Jean, share more on this for people who may be new to you and even those who are not new and they're very familiar with your work. This is a beautiful opportunity for people to dive deep with your teachings.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that introduction to, the work we've been doing together. Like you said, 11 years. Seems like a finger snap.
Yeah.
It's so enjoyable. But yeah, and just reflecting on looking at those the titles, each of those are about a year's worth of work because Lauren and I would do one a month. So if there's 12 or more in each of those, then we were basically unpacking each of those in a month. And what I try to do is usually I use shamanic journeying to contact I call it the F1 team today, but the higher beings, a lot of them were Arcturian, some called intergalactics, and receive from them of course in conjunction probably with my higher self and this self, what the topic is, and of course it's coming from the divine. So in a sense, there's the divine field, or the intention is there was a divine field that inspired each of those. So when you listen to those transmissions or even listen to the talk, it includes the talking portion. You're making a connection to that divine field that's present. It's not like you're connecting to in the past. So in that way, it's a morphic field. If people have heard that term, that's has continued to develop. That will continue to develop. That continues to develop when you connect to it. And even if you use it, in a year from now, whatever the transmission, 2 years. So it will be a developed morphic field, and of course, your field will be in a different place. So in a way, it's like a cosmic library. They call it a codex, and that was the intention. So that wasn't random in terms of how we tried to create that, or I tried to connect to the higher beings in that way. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that aspect of the I guess you call it the product or the connection.
Yes, thank you. And one of the beautiful aspects of these is that the conversation around each of the transmissions is so enriching. Oftentimes, you share on books that could be read to deepen our understanding. And so there's so much information in these sessions. And each of these sessions have the energy transmission portion extracted. So you can literally go back, or you could just download the energy transmissions and organize them on your phone and on your computer, your Kindle, your tablet, whatever, so that you can work with these really easily without all that chatter and the information. But you're going to want to listen to the whole thing because, again, it's very enriching and highly supportive for our family of light that gather for these sessions. So it's a beautiful opportunity. And we want to make this easy. So there's payment plans available. And if you need help with that, please reach out and let us know if there's a different payment plan that you need. But we want you to get started with this and to use this again. To me, this is one of the most important things that we can do is really awaken the sacred technology of the human body, especially as the world changes right now. We can be pulled off kilter in a second, but when we know how to just shift the energy or anchor in more divine energy, that's really our true power. And in today's world, with we don't know what's going on out there. Well, we're seeing a lot of stuff going on out there. Who knows what's real? What I do know that's real is this. This is real. This energy is our energy. Our our energy within us, the experience of this energy becomes our truth. That's what truth is to me. It's not someone outside of us saying it's true because it's a fact. Well, guess what? What we did today becomes a fact in our lives. What we witnessed is our truth. And that to me is really important in these times. So, everyone who's watching, you are a new earth leader. and you are learning this because you're going to maybe turn around someday and help others. So, Jean, as we close our beautiful circle today, I want to thank you, and I want to allow you a moment to reflect on what I just said or any other thing that comes to your heart.
Well, yeah, thanks for that space and for creating this space, over the last greater than a decade. And I wanted to thank everyone for being here. I did feel, this activation was very special, very layered, and it was because of our group collective. Maybe there was some contribution of being here at the end of the Camino journey and this land energy and the spiritual beings here. But I really think it was the group here, because really the group, this particular type of work and spiritual energy, the spirit world meets the individual and the group. Also, the group is becoming very important, I think, spiritually, because more can be brought down when you're in group formation. It's always great to work alone for your own spiritual development, but something added happens in a group setting. So I really wanted to thank everyone here and feel that this particular activation has a lot of divine layers in it.
Yes, thank you all for being here and sharing this beautiful experience with us. Jean, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for taking time. You are amazing that you can do this at the end of the Camino. Oh my God, how many days did that take you?
I think we were on the trail for about 10 days.
See, that's amazing that you still, most people would be like, no, I'll catch you later, a different time, another day. But you are just so committed to helping everyone. You're in great service to humanity, and it shows. So we are all thanking you and giving you a big hug and wishing you a safe journey back to your home. Thank you, Jean.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you, everyone. I hope that your heart is full, that you're feeling these energies. We have some people on our YouTube channel saying it was amazing, that they're feeling the compression and the expansion, and it's still with us. So thank you. Share this radiant light of your heart with our world. Thank you, everyone. Namaste. Bye.
Hi.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Access information, education, and videos on living from the heart in unity consciousness. Visit newearth1.com.